You will now be placed into conference.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi.
The freshman hasn't needed. Next week's going to be so busy, I won't have any time.
Yeah. Hi, this is Iowa State.
University of Iowa's here.
University of Northern Iowa's on.
Nancy Butker's on.
Milt's on.
Sherry's on.
This 2019 will come to order. I will begin by calling the roll. Regent Barker.
Here.
I would like to acknowledge our new Regent, David Barker.
Thank you.
Regent Bates.
Present.
Regent Butker.
Present.
Regent County.
Present.
Regent Dakovich.
Present.
Regent Dunkel.
Present.
Regent Lindemeyer is absent. Regent Richards is present. We have a quorum and can proceed. Are there any items board members would like to remove from the consent agenda for a separate vote? A motion and a second are required to approve and receive items on the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Move the consent agenda.
Second.
Yep.
Right. Nancy, you got in second. Motion by Regent County, second by Regent Butker. Any discussion? Now we'll have a roll call vote. Regent Barker?
Yes.
Regent Bates?
Yes.
Regent Butker?
Yes.
Regent County?
Yes.
Regent Dakovich?
Yes.
Regent Dunkel?
Yes.
Regent Richards votes yes. The motion is approved. This time I'd like to recognize Brad Berg from the Regents office, who will make comments and introduce others who will speak.
Thank you, President Richards and members of the board. Before the board today is the first reading of the proposed tuition and fees for the 2019-20 academic year, with the second and final reading scheduled for the June meeting. The proposed tuition rates include a 3.9% increase to the base undergraduate tuition rates at the University of Iowa and Iowa State University, with all University of Northern Iowa rates remaining flat with the current year. The docket also includes varying increases to other student categories, differential tuition, and mandatory fees as provided in the docket. We do have representatives from the various student governments and the university presidents that are scheduled to comment on the tuition proposals. And following those comments, we can open it up for questions and any further discussion. With that, I would like to recognize the president of UNI Student Government, Jacob LeBang. Jacob?
Yeah, I'm here. Hello?
Hi, Jacob.
All right, so hello all. My name is... Can I begin calling whenever? Are you all right? Good? Okay. My name is Jacob LeBang. I'm the current student body president at the University of Northern Iowa. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to speak today. Along with that, I'd like to commend you all for the work that you not only do for the state of Iowa, more specifically higher education. I'm here today to voice the student stance on the tuition reading. Students of the University of Northern Iowa pride themselves on being different from other Iowa institutions. UNI is an institution with a more personalized education program that strives to meet the needs of all of our students. We pride ourselves on developing the future educators of Iowa, and above all, we pride ourselves on giving back to the state of Iowa. While these qualities set us apart, they do not make UNI a better institution, just a different institution. As student leaders, we've been excited to hear the board's perspective over this past year, as we believe the message has been heard loud and clear. We need to start competing with schools more like us, and with the current tuition, we simply aren't able to do so. The rising cost of higher education is something we recognize cannot be fixed overnight. We must work as hard as we can to keep it affordable for students. We fully agree with the board's direction, fully appropriate UNI's ask of $4 million. Being able to keep our tuition fees flat this next year will be a tremendous first step in the right direction to shift our focus to compete with our peer institutions rather than the other regions. I'd like to thank President Nook and the board for your work to keep tuition only affordable but predictable. These conversations we are having are extremely optimistic, and we look forward to continuing conversations. Also, to further comment, this past week, our Student Fees Committee made the original recommendation to cut our shuttle services from students in its entirety. After listening to several concerned students, it was made clear that this decision was not in the student body's best interest. The main complaint we received was the access to education was being taken away from students, particularly those from low-income backgrounds. This was a decision that we decided would hurt our institution as a whole and take away from our purpose of providing quality education to everyone. The student body quickly stepped up to take action by organizing a petition and opening up several social media accounts. This allowed them to collect student opinions, along with providing transparency along the way. From these efforts, the student government was able to formulate an alternative to the current proposal, which we then presented to President Nook this last week. After hearing the concerns and considering the proposal, the President made the appropriate adjustments to the original proposal, allowing the students to keep the busing system running from homecoming through spring break. On behalf of the student body, I'd like to thank President Nook for giving us this opportunity to accurately show how much the bus means to the students. And I say that we would like to have a fully functional shuttle system that operates year-round. We understand that in the current state of our institution, this is an extremely fair compromise. In conclusion, I'd like to thank you all, the board, for your time today, and I look forward to working with you the rest of the year. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next presenter, the president of Iowa State University Student Government, Austin Graber. Austin?
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to thank the board for giving me the privilege to speak today on behalf of the 35,000 students of Iowa State University. I would first like to preface by saying no one is thrilled to be having this discussion once again on the tuition increase proposals. These discussions and these meetings are happening too often. Prior to creating this statement, I discussed with former student government president about his statement made a year ago. Seeing his previous statement, the narrative has not changed. As mentioned, the board originally proposed $7 million for support and state funding for undergraduate students here at Iowa State. A $7 million proposal cut to $4 million is disheartening. I understand that the Board of Regents is doing everything they can with the limited resources available, but we have to find solutions for our hardworking students and my fellow classmates. Clearly, higher education is not a top priority for our state based on the current proposals. We have to put more emphasis on the importance of higher education and showcase what we and our alumni are doing at each university. My fellow classmates, our fellow Iowans, and students all across the state deserve to be recognized for their efforts of improving themselves and the people around them through furthering their education, and to disregard that is truly hurtful. Students shouldn't have to worry about whether or not they will be able to come back to school each year. We have enough to worry about in being college students. In justification for the increases to Iowa State University's tuition and fees, the easy excuse is to compare us to the other institutions in our peer group. Although the tuition of Iowa Regent institutions is low when compared to peer institutions, this does not minimize the impact these increases have on students and families that are struggling to pay the current tuition. When established through the Moral Land Grant Act, our mission was to provide farmers and people of the working class access to higher education, which they could not have otherwise been able to enjoy. This trend of tuition increases will soon lead us to lose the very reason we were created in the first place, to make high-quality education broadly available. Two of Iowa State's strategic goals are to, 1, ensure that students receive an exceptional education, and 2, improve the lives for all Iowans. This increase puts a damper on these two goals. We are forced to turn away our prestigious professors because we can no longer afford them, or they are finding a better price somewhere else. We are forced to turn away potential Iowan students because they simply cannot afford to come to Iowa State anymore. This increase will also tremendously hurt our out-of-state students, turning them away from our commendable state and university. I do not know how much weight this statement will have. I do not know whether the legislature will take this to heart and actually change the current trend. What I do know is that here at Iowa State University, we will do everything in our power to ensure that we don't skip a beat despite these increases. I hope that the next students in my position will have a different story to tell. Iowa State University will work to change the script, and we hope you all will too. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin. From the President of the University of Iowa Student Government, Noelle Mills. Noelle?
Good morning. My name is Noelle Mills, and I'm the President of the University of Iowa Student Government. I'd like to thank the Board of Regents and University Administration for your hard work ensuring predictability in the tuition increases. We value the ability to budget and make sound financial decisions. However, we implore the administration to seriously consider how big of a burden just a few $100s can place on students. A mere $300 would require around 30 hours of work, 8 appointments donating plasma, or skipping around 60 meals. These are very real consequences for my peers and for me. With scholarship opportunities dwindling, rent prices increasing, and a cap of 20 hours per week on university-affiliated jobs, students are already struggling to make ends meet. We will continue doing our part by sending delegates to the state capitol as frequently as we can afford, supporting resources on campus like the clothing closet and food pantry, and promoting financial aid opportunities. We're committed to working with you to find other ways to lighten the load, but we ask that you continue pressuring our legislators to consider the value our university brings to Iowa and fund it appropriately. We also hope you will continue finding ways to maintain the quality of our institution without putting the students it serves at risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Noelle. And our final student representative is Dexter Gollinghorst, President of the University of Iowa Graduate and Professional Student Government. Dexter?
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Dexter Gollinghorst, and I serve as the President of the University of Iowa Graduate and Professional Student Government. I appreciate the opportunity to address the board this afternoon on the important topic of tuition and fees. While much of the board's focus is and has been on the consideration of tuition and fees for resident undergraduate students, I feel that the unique role the University of Iowa plays in educating our state's graduate and professional students warrants discussion specific to the population that I represent. It is regrettable that we again meet to discuss increases in tuition and fees and thereby increasing the burden and cost of achieving educational goals of our students. As we continue to work with the legislature and other sources of funding, it is paramount that the board and administrators consider the real-world impact that these increases have on our students. Students expect and demand that our graduate and professional programs be high quality and sustainable, and understand that this requires investment from multiple sources, including tuition. But as a significant source of funding and revenue for the university, graduate and professional students likewise expect that transparency and predictability are prioritized when setting our own tuition rates. I urge the board to make this an expectation not only for setting undergraduate tuition rates, but for graduate and professional programs as well. This is especially true where proposed tuition increases far exceed the baseline increase rate, creating significant unplanned financial burden for students. Generally speaking, it is not enough to say that our tuition rates are the lowest in our peer group and therefore must go up. And it is not enough to simply promise that new revenues will be used to improve ambiguous goals. Instead, students should be engaged in these critical conversations early and often within their programs so that they know what to expect, where their money is being directed that impacts their education, and how their own increased investment through tuition is going to yield a return for their future. This is a principle that ought to be universally true across graduate and professional programs. Students entering programs and choosing the University of Iowa for their education deserve to know what kind of financial impact that decision will have on them and when to expect an increase in those rates. Anything less is simply not transparent or predictable. To close my comments, I want to emphasize GPSG's commitment to engaging in conversations surrounding accountability and transparency in the tuition and fees process moving forward, and appreciate the board's commitment to seriously considering student input when evaluating both tuition and fee increase proposals. GPSG's support of the arts and cultural fee and mental health fee before you today reflect our recognition that the preservation of our campus culture and responsibility to respond to student demand while maintaining the quality of our education. Thank you.
Thank you, Dexter, and thank you to all of our student presenters today. At this time, I would like to recognize President Harold of the University of Iowa. President Harold.
Yes, thank you. First, I'd like to congratulate our new student body president, Noel Mills, who you heard from a moment ago. I'd also like to congratulate Dexter on winning his second term as president of the Graduate and Professional Student Group. And I'd like to also thank and congratulate Hira Mustafa, who will be graduating next week, for her great leadership over the last year. Raising tuition should never, ever be easy for any of us. And I think the only way to address this issue, as others have said, is in a longer-term context. I've spoken many times about the dramatic decline in state funding over the last decade. And it's in that context that I think we need to understand that also, for whatever set of reasons, we've not been able to get our tuition up to even offset that decline in state appropriations. And I think that's the reason that we're here. So I would encourage the state and the board to continue thinking about these two issues together, and they're dynamically and inexorably linked. And that is also why I applaud the Board of Regents' efforts over the last several years to come up with a 5-year tuition plan that does in fact link those directly, and also has the element of predictability in it for our students and our families. I will also say that our current strategic plan that we've approved, you approved, we've been hard at work trying to accomplish and execute towards, still has fairly significant gap, and it's unfunded. And I would agree with everything all of our students have said, but I would also just remind you that there is a brand that's going on your CV called a degree from the University of Iowa. And in the last few years, the value of that degree, as seen by others, has been dropping in some of the rankings. We need to stop that, and stop that now. And the way to do that is to close this gap in our funding. And that's also the reason that we have launched into a exploration of a public-private partnership, the so-called P3. If, and that's a big if, we ever are able to fund that, it might give us some hope against this. So we're doing, as well as that, we're also taking $11 to $12 million of costs out through centralization, automation, and the like. So all those come together to play here. I think that's a long way of saying, yes, as nasty as it is, I do in fact support the holistic view of our revenues across all the possible lines. And we are at a watershed moment where we either are going to find ways to fund our strategic plan so we can actually improve our activities in student success, research, engagement throughout the state, or we're going to have to cap our aspirations based on a limited set of resources. Net, I approve. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, President Harold. Iowa State University President Winterstein.
Thank you, President Richards.
Well, I truly appreciate the $12 million increase in state appropriations to be split among the Regents institutions for general operations. This amount falls well short of the board's $18 million request, a request that was supported by the governor. We are disappointed to see the trend of underfunding of public higher education continue. Currently, Iowa State's general fund appropriation is $20 million less than our appropriation in the year 2000. In 2000, we had 26,845 students, and this year we had 34,992 students, and more than 19,000 ISU students are from Iowa. As president, I'm committed to maintaining Iowa State University's high quality. Accordingly, our budget priorities include retaining and recruiting high-quality faculty and staff to ensure our students learn from and are supported by the best. We compete for top talent on a national level, and we must be able to provide competitive salaries and salary increases to attract and keep the best and brightest. To ensure that a high-quality Iowa State education remains accessible to a diverse student body by providing appropriate financial aid and scholarships. And finally, to be able to optimize and renovate building capacity and address our staggering deferred maintenance issues. We reported to the board in September that we would need $32.5 million in new resources. Through a combination of state funding, tuition revenue, and savings and realignments to advance these priorities in the coming fiscal year. We promised to do our part through internal savings and strategic realignment. Last year, for example, we identified $12 million in strategic realignment. We're also implementing a new enterprise management system and streamlining our human resources and finance services, which allow us to optimize the day-to-day business of the university. We support the board's 5-year tuition plan to make tuition increases predictable and transparent. This plan keeps annual undergraduate resident tuition increases at a modest 3%, contingent on state funding. But we needed the state to do its part by fully funding our legislative request. Unfortunately, that did not happen. Continuing a long-term trend by the state of underfunding or cutting support for public higher education and shifting the burden to our students and their families. To better understand the ramifications of state funding and tuition trends, one of our graduating seniors conducted his own research. After poring over nearly 30 years of financial statements, Brandon Beecham, an honors student from Ankeny, found that at ISU, state funding is no longer subsidizing resident tuition the way it once did. He also links the decline in state funding to a drop in faculty pay relative to Iowa State's peer institutions. Beecham, who is a double major in accounting and finance, said, and I quote, "We can't keep cutting instructor pay or our faculty will leave, our national rankings will go down, and we'll lose international students who use those rankings when determining where to go to college." My team and I are working on a salary proposal for faculty and staff that we'll share with the board next month. We're also working hard to increase scholarship funding for our students, and our alums and friends are responding. More than $18 million in private scholarships were awarded last year. In addition, Iowa State has made significant progress in reducing the cost of textbooks to our students. This past year, Iowa State students saved $2.5 million by having access to free or low-cost electronic textbooks and other course content. Iowa State provides a great return on investment to the state. Last year, faculty generated $246 million in external grants and contracts. In addition, Iowa State is partnering with the Iowa Economic Development Authority to create wealth in Iowa by commercializing research discoveries. I am very appreciative of new legislative funding of $825,000 that will support increased research in bio-based chemicals. ISU research and extension programs are also focused on critical Iowa challenges, including water quality and nutrient management, and supporting our livestock and poultry industries through a strong veterinary diagnostic clinic. Economic development and company assistant programs like our Center for Industrial Research and Service leverage our research and expertise for the benefit of Iowans in every single county. Last year, SARA served 5,700 Iowa companies in all 99 counties, generating more than $840 million of total economic impact. To put that in perspective, $840 million from just one program at Iowa State is more than 4 times that of our annual state appropriation. I promise Iowa State University will do everything possible to help the people of Iowa and our legislators better understand the benefits of increased investment in Iowa State University. I need to do a much more effective job of helping Iowans know the value to this state of supporting the students who attend Iowa State University. I will make it clear that investments made in university research benefit Iowa's businesses, communities, and people. I must make the case that Iowa State's research park is a powerful economic engine of growth for this great state. The future of Iowa is closely tied to the future of our Regent universities, and we must begin to recognize the great return on investment our universities bring to the state. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, President Winterstein. And lastly, before we turn it back to Richards, we'll hear from the University of Northern Iowa's President Nook. President Nook.
Thank you, Regent President Richard, for the opportunity to comment on our tuition and fees request for FY 2020. As we built our 5-year tuition plan nearly 2 years ago, we considered 2 important questions. What is needed to maintain the quality of education that our students deserve and employers require? And what can we do to control costs of education, but especially the cost to our students? We quickly realized there is a fairly simple relationship between quality, the cost to the state, and the cost to our students. We constructed a 5-year budget that held the increases in our total educational expenditures over a 15-year period to less than the consumer price index. This is an extremely difficult task for a higher educational institution. As we developed our plan, analysis showed that our cost to students, tuition and fees, was not competitive and was affecting our efforts to recruit students to UNI. Working with the Regents, we devised a 5-year plan to hold our tuition at current levels. This would require investment from the state, or the quality of the education we offered would suffer. Based on our enrollment projections, increases to our state appropriation of $4 to $5 million per year would allow UNI to hold our tuition at the FY19 levels. Doing so over a 5-year period would result in a cost to our students that is more competitive and allow our enrollment to grow. UNI requested the $4 million in new state funding so we could hold our tuition flat and maintain the quality we are known for. The $4 million in new state funding and 0 increase in tuition for next year is an important first step in helping UNI become more competitive in an extremely competitive marketplace. Regents, thank you for recognizing and understanding the differences in the mission of our 3 state universities and that demographic and economic forces impact us differently. Our fee request is fairly straightforward. We are asking that the student activity fee, student services fee, and building fee remain at the FY19 level so that we can become more competitive in the total cost to our students. On behalf of the university, I offer thanks to the members of the Student Fees Committee for taking on very difficult issues in drafting the initial recommendations. I extend a special thank you to Kristen Ahart, our outgoing NISG Vice President and Student Chair of the committee. Kristen did the very heavy work of representing the committee's recommendations to her fellow students at NISG and addressing questions from departments and programs across campus. Thank you to our new NISG student leaders and students from across campus who engaged in providing feedback and recommendations on the fees and the process. Thank you.
Thank you, President Nook. With that, I'll turn it back to President Richards.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Do the Regents have any questions for any of the presenters?
President Richards, if I could make some comments, please. This
Yes.
is Nancy Dunkel.
Nancy, yes.
So we know that the members of the Board of Regents have worked very hard to hold the cost of education down to the bare minimum. So thank you to President Richards for laying out this tuition plan for the past 18 months or more, always talking about the balance between tuition, between decreasing expenses, and state funding from the Iowa legislature. Through the tuition task force, which was set up over 18 months ago, many of us as board members went to each of the colleges and we attended the listening sessions to hear out parents and taxpayers and students. And we heard time and time again, we don't want any surprises. We want predictability. We want affordability. So all this was done with a firm hope to hold down tuition. And I'm comfortable with the process and our strategy of not having tuition discussions until after we see what the legislature does and listening to those we serve. Last fall, each of the institutions laid out their strategic plan for maintaining their goals, and the plans included tuition increases as well as specific expense reductions necessary to maintain their rankings and reputation and still provide a high-quality education. So I'm comfortable with the amount of money our Board of Regents requested from the legislature. They were real dollars. But what I'm not comfortable with is the repercussions of the shortfall in our request from the legislature. Now, I'd be preaching to the choir to go into all the benefits that we receive from having a higher degree. But an important piece is that a person with a BA earns in Iowa at least $1 million more than a person with just a high school degree over a lifetime. And that's real measurable value. Yesterday, some of us, and I included, went to the Future Ready Iowa Summit. And the Iowa Workforce Development created a hot jobs list for occupations that were in highest demand in the state of Iowa. And jobs like research analysts and physical therapists and nurse practitioners and even personal financial advisors. Many of these hot jobs are in the STEM careers and require at least a bachelor's degree. They also gave us a booklet, and it was entitled Metrics That Matter 2019. I noted that one of the metrics that matter is that Iowa needs to achieve a goal that 70% of Iowans have some education or training beyond high school by 2025. And that goal translates to about 140,000 more Iowans with education beyond high school. We have a lot of work to do to get that number up, and it will take money and it will take great universities to get us there. But our businesses are demanding this more educated workforce, and they need the help to attract and retain these workers. Governor Reynolds knows this, and that's probably one of the reasons that the budget that she presented fully funded our request for $18 million. So I'm disappointed and disheartened with the amount of funding that we're to receive in FY 2020. Asking for $18 million and then receiving $12 million doesn't cover all of our needs that the president laid out in their strategies. I know our legislators have a long list of different needs and wants for the money in the state, and it's a difficult task to meet everyone's request. But I believe that by not funding our Board of Regents request, we're making it harder for our next generation of leaders to have a great education that is both high quality and affordable. And at the same time, that we're not meeting the projected employment needs of the businesses in our state. I want to thank Chris Saunders and Kristen Bauer and Mary Brown for their good work at the Capitol this past year, and also thanks to all of our presidents and for our student bodies for taking time to reach out to the legislators and help them try to understand the process and the amount of money that we do need and that we're requesting. So it's all very helpful. So we'll move on from this year, and we'll live with this appropriation shortfall and the tuition increase, and I just hope that we can do better in the next legislative session.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from any other regions? This is David Barker.
Yes. I also want to commend the board for developing a predictable and transparent process for tuition. Just a question for Presidents Harold and Winterstein. I wonder if you could explain briefly the different approaches that you've taken to non-resident tuition. The percentage increase at Iowa State is quite a bit higher there than it is for the University of Iowa.
Yes, this is President Harold. Thank you, Regent Barker, for the question. Quite simply, we take a really hard look at our peer group for each college and professional graduate school and look at the market and basically take as much aggressiveness as we can in pricing without trying to damage the applicant pool, if you will. So it's a price elasticity. I know I'm talking to an economist here. So it's the trade-off between getting the pricing up as high as we can to keep the quality and the quantity of students applying to each of the graduate schools. And we over the last several years, we've been pretty aggressive throughout our entire group of out-of-state undergraduate and graduate and professional schools. So that's basically the approach.
Thank you, Regent Barker, for that question. And I would just add that as we sat and thought about what would be the appropriate increase for our non-resident students, President Harold and I actually texted each other back and forth and discussed this issue briefly. What it came down to at Iowa State is that we wanted a clear differentiation between our Iowa students and our non-resident students because of the support that's provided by the state legislature for Iowa students. And so out-of-state tuition really does need to be seen as covering the complete cost. When you look at the differential increase between the two universities, it really came down to the fact that we have a much lower non-resident tuition right now than the University of Iowa does. So we thought we had some room in that market to take a more aggressive position.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from any other regions? This is Regent Richards. I have a brief statement. One of the board's key missions is to keep Iowa public universities as accessible and affordable as possible for every Iowan that wants to attend. This is at the core of our oversight. While doing this, we also must maintain the quality of education that our institutions provide and our students demand. Funding is necessary. We have done in-depth studies of funding of the universities for the past several years. There are three primary revenue sources: tuition, state appropriations, and savings and reallocations at the universities. As I have said on many prior times, these three funding sources together provide the total resources needed by our universities. Funding of our public universities is a partnership. We all have a stake, as citizens of Iowa, we all have a stake in keeping our universities the top-notch institutions that they presently are. Each funding source, tuition, state appropriations, and reallocations, is dependent on the other. We must talk about them collectively, looking at the total funding required. This Board of Regents have talked openly and have been very transparent about the board's new multi-year tuition model that we unveiled last November. We needed to wait until we had enough information about the state budget to set tuition for next year. The proposed tuition rates that the board is considering hold to the principles of our tuition and total resources model. For the University of Iowa and Iowa State University, we are within the guide rails that we have set for resident undergraduate tuition increase that has previously been outlined. We are continuing to take steps to make the University of Northern Iowa more competitive in pricing with our other Midwest comprehensive universities by considering no tuition increase. We have 3 outstanding public universities where the Iowans receive top quality education. Working together, we will make sure that the quality education that our students receive continues. Thank you. Are there any other comments? Thank you to everyone. Thank you. Now moving on to the topic of tuitions. I will state the following. This is the first of 2 readings for consideration of proposed 2019-2020 tuition rate fees and, 2019 and 2020 tuition and fee rates. The board will be asked to approve tuition and fees at its next meeting, June 4 through 6. At this time, I'd like to introduce Andrea Anania, who will have some thoughts for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, President Richard. Several years ago, the board requested that the universities report annually on all institutional or college-wide fees over $1 per semester and all department fees over $10 per semester. The board also requested that the universities secure board approval prior to the initiation of new fees or increases in the amount of existing fees. Since that time, these fees have evolved into what is presented to you today in Agenda Item 4, Common and University Program-Specific Fees. All fees cover the direct cost of using these additional miscellaneous services, and students pay only for the services they use. Common fees are those that 2 or all 3 universities charge for specific services. A list of those fees are on pages 2 and 3. University program-specific fees are those fees that only one university charges. A list of these fees are on pages 4 through 6. All proposed changes from last year are highlighted blue, and justifications for all changes may be found on pages 7 through 13. The universities have also provided glossaries which contain brief descriptions of each fee. These glossaries are included in the board's docket materials as well as on our website with this agenda item. The board is asked to do 2 things today. First, the board is asked to consider the proposed changes. Action on all changes is scheduled for the June meeting. Second, the board is asked to authorize the executive director to file a notice of intent to amend the Iowa Administrative Code. Since application fees are listed in the Iowa Administrative Code, any proposed changes to them are also required to be approved by the Administrative Rules Committee prior to implementation. Application fees are the only fees in these 2 listings that are in the administrative rules. If authorized as requested, board office staff will begin the process by filing a notice of intent to increase 3 application fees as shown on page 2. An increase in the undergraduate domestic student and non-degree student application fees from $40 to $50 at both the University of Iowa and Iowa State University, and also an increase in the undergraduate international student application fee from $50 to $60 at Iowa State University. That concludes my remarks. I'll open it up to comments or questions and then back to President Richards. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll state the following. This is the first of 2 readings of the board for consideration of the proposed changes to common and university program-specific fees for the 2019-20 academic year. The board will be asked to approve these fee changes at its next meeting on June 4 through 6. A motion and a second are required to authorize the executive director to file the notice of intent to amend Iowa Administrative Code 681-1.7 to increase the application fees at the University of Iowa and Iowa State University as highlighted in the docket memo. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Regent County. And that was Regent Dunkel.
Butker.
A motion by Regent County and a second by Regent Dunkel. Any further discussion? We'll have a roll call vote. Regent Barker?
Yes.
Yes. Regent Bates?
Yes.
Regent Butker?
Yes.
Regent County?
Yes.
Regent Dokovich?
Yes.
Regent Dunkel?
Yes.
Regent Richards votes yes. The motion is approved. Moving on to the next item. Closed session. The board has necessity to meet in closed session pursuant to Iowa Code Section 21.5.1.c to discuss strategy with counsel in matters that are presently in litigation or where litigation is imminent and the premature disclosure would likely prejudice or disadvantage the position of the board. At the conclusion of this closed session, the board will reconvene in open session. Is there a motion the board enter into closed session?
So moved.
I so move.
Regent Barker beat you because.
Okay.
Is there a second by Regent
I'll
Bates?
second. Yeah.
Motion by Regent Barker. I'm afraid the people in the room here have a upper advantage. And a second by Regent Bates. Is there any further discussion? We'll have a roll call vote. Regent Barker?
Yes.
Regent Bates?
Yes.
Regent Butker?
Yes.
Regent County?
Yes.
Regent Dokovich?
Yes.
Regent Dunkel? Regent
Yes.
Richards votes yes. The motion is approved. And after we have this closed session, we will reconvene in public session. Any other business to come before the board? Hearing none, this meeting, the Board of Regents, State of Iowa, is adjourned.